Ready to go? All right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Reagan, and I am the chair of the Family Practice Advisory Committee. It is 9:11 in the morning, and so I'd like to call the June 14th, 2023 Family Practice Advisory Committee meeting to order. Please be aware, this meeting is also being broadcast via the internet. I think that's true still.
Yes.
And those present in the room will be visible to the public. Before we begin, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome those joining us via Zoom and ask that they observe the following etiquette. Please state your name before you speak, mute your mic when not speaking, and keep background noise to a minimum. We will begin with a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. When I call your name, please announce that you're present. I, Mike Reagan, am present. Fred Unger?
Present.
Alicia Cantrell?
Present.
And she is a new appointee by the governor, so welcome. Glad to have you. Elida Munoz? Mark Nadeau?
I'm present.
Lisa Nash? Damon Schranz?
Present.
Dana Sprudy?
Present.
Awesome. Zubair Syed?
Present, I'm here.
Ephraim Vela?
I'm here.
Awesome. Zoe Wang, I believe, is on a honeymoon. And Justin Wright?
Present.
Awesome. And Justin is also new. He's appointed by the Texas Organization of Family Practice Program Directors. Eric Warwick? All right.
Is our alternate.
Yeah, he's an alternate. And so I believe that constitutes a quorum. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So we do have a quorum. If you'll record that in the minutes. Members, join us virtually to ensure that we maintain a quorum. Please keep your cameras turned on during the duration of the meeting. We want to see your bright, shining faces. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is Texas Higher Education staff introductions. This time we'll have the coordinating board staff and invited guests present or who are present or on the call introduce themselves to the committee. We'll begin with Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs.
Good morning. Nice to see you all. I think we have some good news to share with you all today, and I'm excited to see you all and hear the discussion and welcome you to this meeting. I know everybody is very busy. I want to thank those who drove in and fought the Austin traffic. Appreciate it, and just look forward to hearing the discussion and learning from you all today.
Good morning, I'm Ernest Hawkins. I am program manager for the Family Practice Residency program. Glad to be here. We've got a lot of information to go through today, so please bear with us. We're having technical issues, so again, if you hear something or something's not right, just let me know. My main concern is camera feed going out, so just be cautious of that and be sure to let us know if anything is out of the ordinary, okay? Thank you very much.
Tom?
Tom Banning, I'm the CEO of the Texas Academy of Family Physicians.
And then on the Zoom call,
Hi, I'm Cindy Fisher. I'm the GME Expansion and Planning Grant Program Director.
thank you for being here.
Good morning, my name is Ephraim Vela. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist and CMO of Women's Hospital in Edinburgh, Texas. Previous to being an OB-GYN, I was a family physician, and we are currently in the process of dismantling the relationship we had with UT-RGV and DHR. And I heard the conversation earlier about the family practice program being restarted here at DHR Edinburgh.
All right. Yeah, we'll get into that, and hopefully Ms. Fisher will be able to help us out with some of that.
Good morning, Zubair Syed, Program Director at UT Southwestern here in Dallas. Nice to meet you all again.
Great. I think we've gotten everybody introduced. As one more.
I'm Sharon Manson. I'm the director of the Faculty Development Center at UNT-HSC.
Great. Welcome. Glad to have you. I think that's got everybody, I believe. Is that right? Okay, we'll move on. Our first item is an action item, approval of minutes. Agenda item 2 is consideration of possible action to approve minutes from the June 1st, 2022 Family Practice Advisory Committee meeting. Members, I think you have those in your packet and they've been distributed. Are there any comments, corrections, or additions needed to these minutes?
Motion to approve.
Move to approve. Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Have a second? Dana? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So we'll have those minutes approved as presented. I will move on to item 3, which is updates. Agenda item 3 is the updates on the legislative session and the Faculty Development Center. Tom Banning, CEO, Executive Vice President of the Texas Academy of Family Physicians, will provide a legislative update and be available for questions. It was quite an interesting session. Lots of money.
Yep.
Didn't fix all the problems though, did we?
Still lots of money
That's right.
that people are squabbling over, and I'm going to be considerate of what I say since we're streaming. I'm going to do my best to be brief and just run through a couple of high-level numbers for you that I'm sure Elizabeth and her team are going to discuss as well. As you know, we came into this session with about $34 billion in additional surplus due to a variety of factors. A significant portion of those dollars are being targeted toward property tax cuts, and what form that takes is still being debated. But the legislature did put some of those dollars toward graduate medical education and other areas that I'm going to talk briefly about that impact operations for our programs. So for the family practice residency programs, the dollars that you guys will be discussing later today, we received about a 74% increase in existing funds to move those dollars to $6.5 million for the biennia. So hopefully that will help smooth out some of your funding issues on a per resident basis. The physician education loan repayment program, which a number of your graduates utilize, was increased 20.3% to $35.5 million per year. For those of you who don't remember, that program pays up to $180,000 over a 4-year term to physicians who go into practice into primary care, rural and underserved communities. The coordinating board has a formula by which they sort of rank physicians that apply, but it is a very successful program and well utilized to the point where we were oversubscribed. So the additional dollars should help place physicians into communities of need. We also saw a 70% increase in funding to the Texas Primary Care Preceptorship Program. That's a program that 3 organizations run: the Academy, the Texas Academy of Family Physicians, the Texas Pediatric Society, and the Texas Academy of Internal Medicine have historically applied for grants from the coordinating board to help place first and second year medical students in a community-based setting, so students could see the joys of practicing primary care outside of an academic medical center. Again, the experience that we have had have shown a significant number of those that participate in the program go on into primary fields, and given the shortage we have in primary care, the legislature saw fit to increase that funding and try to expose more students to those opportunities.
Tom, I didn't catch the amount.
It is $4.85 million for the biennia, and it was funded I believe, after the 5% cut that every agency took was around 2.75. So if memory serves.
Yeah, 'cause it's a $2 million increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
And lastly, from two more pieces from a GME standpoint, The Rural Resident Physician Grant Program was funded at $3 million for the biennia. Again, this is to give programs flexibility to opening up locations in rural communities that that don't have the census or the patient census to house a full service or full standing residency program and get students out into those rural communities. Lastly, and I think Cindy will probably talk about this later, the legislature put more dollars into the graduate medical education expansion program, which is great for Texas trying to meet the 1.1 to 1 goal of medical or residency physicians to graduating medical students. So it's been hugely successful in terms of opening up capacity, new programs, as well as expanding existing programs with significantly increased dollars going to those areas. A couple other things that I'd highlight that I think will be beneficial to the operations of our programs. One is the legislature did, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, increase Medicaid rates. Those are the legislature gave the HHSC some direction in how they wanted those dollars spent, but HHSC has also been tasked with looking at essentially certain codes or services that they may be lacking services in or having network issues in. But I think the primary one that y'all would be interested in would be a 6% increase for pediatric E&M services. When you think about Medicaid, the vast majority of those that are enrolled in the program are, younger, are children. And the number of physicians, both family doctors and pediatricians and other specialists that are opening up their roles to new Medicaid patients has been dropping. So the legislature saw the need to try to target rates to increase availability of physician services. So 6% may not sound like a lot, but being flat for 2 years, it is a step in the right direction. And hopefully we can show some positive gains in terms of accessibility going forward with that increase. The legislature also expanded postpartum coverage, Medicaid postpartum coverage for a full year to eligible women. Coverage prior to this change would end after 60 days. So having someone enrolled in Medicaid after giving birth should provide for some better continuity, which is again a positive thing. And lastly, the legislature passed some legislation that would allow for 12 months continuous coverage of birth control pills. So for those patients that were coming in to see you every 30 days or 60 days for birth control, we now have a process for continuous coverage for birth control going forward. So some positive things coming out of the session and some good things to build on going forward. So with that, I said I'd be brief, and that's my report.
Awesome. Thank you.
And happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
And thanks for the advocacy on behalf of family physicians. It was a good session overall, I think. Any questions for Tom? Everyone's shocked. We got extra funding. Speechless.
It's been a while.
3 years on Medicaid, is that what you said? Oh, yes. Okay. Well, very good. Thanks, Tom. We'll turn on to the Faculty Development Center update. Sharon Manson, Interim Director and Senior Educational Program Manager, will provide this overview and be available for questions. Sharon.
Hi there. Just a few things to update from the report that I'd sent in earlier. As we know, Cindy Passmore retired on December 31st. I interviewed and accepted the position as the director of the Faculty Development Center.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We had the Family Medicine Leadership Conference on the middle of April in conjunction with TAFP's annual session. We had about 63 in attendance for that. So that went really well. We finished up our GCAM fellowship, which was the graduate certificate in academic medicine. We had 14 fellows that just finished this past Friday. And we're recruiting for a new class coming up. So if you know of people that you think would benefit from being in the Faculty Development Center, we'd love to have them. The deadline for applications is June 31st or June 30th. Let's see. We awarded 3 scholarships with the funding that we have from the coordinating board to 3 of the family medicine people that were in fellowship. We recently finished the Chief Resident Conference, and in that Chief Resident Conference, we held it both virtually and face-to-face. There was almost no difference in the number of attendees that came virtual and face-to-face other than the coordinators. We had 66 total family medicine attendees that went through it. We had 57 in Texas and 9 from out of state. We had a total of 37 residency programs throughout the state that attended. The on-campus session had 38 chiefs and 3 coordinators. The virtual session had 35 chiefs and 11 coordinators. So something that we're thinking long-term is doing something virtually for coordinators, since that seems to work best for them down the road. Other updates, I think, is we've got some on-demand workshops that we did this year. We did 7 on-demand workshops for various residency programs, and we're still available to do those as needed. We had a total audience of about 377 because we did some virtual conferences that had up to 100 attendees. We did programs at ACOM and STFM, and then we did a rural collaborative for STFM as well. So we've been just out there doing what we need to do. So if anybody needs anything from us, we're available.
All right.
That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Sharon?
I just appreciate all the services that she provides. The conferences were great, and the feedback from the chief conference was really wonderful too. So thanks.
Thank you.
Very great. Awesome work.
Thank
Okay. Thanks for those updates. We now are going to move on to another item of business, which is reallocations. So item 4 on the agenda is consideration and possible action to approve a reallocation of FY 2022-2023 funds. This is an action item, and Ernest is going to lead us through it.
So this slide is not in the packet. So yeah. So each year we try to utilize funds as best we can without having any money come back. And unfortunately, we've had 2 pots of money come back. This year, FY 23, one program had some residents decide not to fulfill their rotation responsibilities. So the program withdrew 5 of those applications, totaling $10,000
For the rural rotation.
for rural rotation, correct?
Okay.
And then through the reconciliation process of the annual financial reports for fiscal year 2022, we had one program return $13,950.57. Explanation for that was they had some staff turnover, logistical issues, on their end, that they were not able to utilize funds. So they sent some money back. So we have $23,950.57 to reallocate. So we have 2 options. We could reallocate to the programs at about $25 per resident for 30 contracts, which would be a timing issue, a nightmare because of our internal process of how we do contracts. and
The accounting of that is.
It kind of just,
difficult.
yeah. not-
Can
so-
you say one more time the total amount though?
Total amount right now is 23,950 with 57 cents.
Oh, you got it up there. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
and we actually, I got an email this week actually with another 750 potentially coming back through an audit of one of our programs. They resubmitted a correct audit, which shows some money coming back, but I have not confirmed that and we haven't received it yet. So potentially this could go up by $750. So again, if we do the contract amendments, it would just be a logistical nightmare. So staff recommends that we reallocate these funds to the FTC. One contract, I'm sure we could expedite it pretty quickly with, little to less paying for our internal folks. And these funds have to be spent by August 31st. So as long as the FTC, can do that, then that would be probably the best option. Bearing, the timing issue and how quickly we can get that contract, written up, approved, and through the process, through the channels.
So I'd like to hear any discussion, but I would say that historically, I think with small amounts of funds, we have typically in the past sent them on to the FTC where they can be utilized. When you ask the question, can the FTC utilize those funds? I saw Sharon smile. So I presume that is a yes that you could. Would you tell us definitively? Yes. That's definitive. We got 2 thumbs up on
That
that.
is definitely, we could definitely
Okay,
use that
so,
money.
but the question is before us, any other discussion about the item? There is a recommendation from staff to shift those funds to the FDC to be utilized for those missions we heard in the report. Any discussion?
We may just be able to do an amendment to their existing contract.
Correct.
So that would be way easier because our
So I
situation is complex.
yes, I will entertain a motion on this item.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve.
A second.
Second, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, before you is a motion to redistribute the 23,950 and some 57 cents, possibly another 750 on top of that to the Faculty Development Center. To good use by Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. So that is approved. Congratulations. Have some extra funds.
All right, thank you so much.
That's right. Go out and buy a lottery ticket. The sign is up there. Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to the next item, which is new program eligibility. Every year, we have to consider whether new programs who've been in operation, I think it's for three years.
3 years, you have to be nationally accredited.
Nationally accredited. So we actually have one program who fits that criteria. So we have to decide if we're going to make that motion. So the agenda item 5, consideration and possible action to approve 2024 FY eligibility for family medicine programs funded under the GME expansion program. This is an action item. And Ernest is going to lead us down this path as well. And I think there's an additional handout. Is that right?
Correct. So there's additional handout with some corrections. The packet, the folks online received has some dated information. We just recently, or actually as of last night, updated those numbers. So we're actually looking at 1 program instead of 2. So that affected some of the allocation numbers in the packet that we'll go over after we decide on this program here. But for now, it's 1 program, which is the HCA Medical City Arlington program. They started July 1st of 2020, makes them eligible this year, being September 1st of 2023. They are approved for 54 residents, and I believe they filled about 48. So to be conservative, we factor in 54 just to give us some cushion there. They have continued accreditation, are in good standing, and meet the eligibility requirements for consideration. So consideration or recommendation is to approve these from staff.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. So the other 4 listed is kind of a looking ahead. So next year we have one other program that could be potentially eligible with 12 residents. The 3 listed after that, Baylor, Shannon, and Texas Tech. Those are of in the initial planning stages, and not sure when they'll begin the planning expansion process, but when they begin, of course, they would bring to the table additional residents for approval as well. So just to kind of look ahead, those 4 programs will be up for consideration at some point.
Okay. And so the recommendation from staff is for approval of this program. I'll tell you historically that we have added programs. We've not ever not added a program that was eligible as far as I know. So there's that history, but I'll open it up for discussion.
There has been some talk that the Arlington HCA program, I mean, there's been a turnover in program directors. The current program director is also, I think next month, changing, and they're looking for another person right now. And even though they have continued accreditation, I think they have an accreditation site visit coming up over the next couple of months. And there seems to be some issues that need to be resolved quite a bit. So at this time, what I know is that it's pretty fluid in terms of they don't have an interim program director scheduled, but they're looking for one as such. And so I don't know whether that makes a difference in this or not, but there is a site visit that's supposed to happen for continued accreditation coming up.
Okay. Well, so I think we can only take action based on the official status of a program. I would think that's my thought. And so they stand approved as we sit. Now, if a program loses accreditation, then they can come off of the funding. And that has happened before for one reason or another over the years. But it is a good point. I was unaware of any issues at the program. I was a bit surprised at the size of the program. It's a large program.
Yeah, they haven't been able to fill all the positions over the last few years. So it is a big program.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Mark Nato. That's interesting that they're having trouble filling all their positions because there's really plenty of applicants out there. Is that I wonder if that's a funding thing. So my point was, and I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I just wanted to be part of the discussion. We've taken the position we're generally going to be inclusive and add new programs as they're eligible. This has an effect on all the programs, and I think we're all aware of that. So I suppose I'm master of the obvious in terms of stating that, but I did want to put that on the table. Is the more programs we have in, the less of a funding stream this is for us, and that affects everybody. But I certainly support the adding the new program.
I think well-made points. I think it hits everyone, and it has been historically, as you say, the approval process. There has been some discussion in the past about programs that get GME expansion dollars and these dollars, so the two sources of funding. And I think would that apply to this program or not? Do we know?
They are receiving expansion funds. So
Yeah.
Is that correct, Cindy?
Yes, that's correct. They do receive GME funding.
And in fact, I think probably most or all of the programs that are going to be added over the years are going to be in that category.
Yes. So I don't know if you're interested. He can let you all know what the difference would be, including them, the per resident.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
So just know,
Right.
I think in the past that it's incrementally a
Right.
smaller hit because there's so many in the program.
Right.
But yeah, what do you have those figures?
54 is a lot, and
Yeah.
they're getting the, I just want you guys to have all the information.
Yes,
I'm not
absolutely.
swaying, I'm just providing the information. So, go ahead.
If we do not approve the program, then we would follow same methodology we did this last year using the 23 numbers. So it'll be 981 residents, and you'll see the per resident amounts on the far right. The difference in the three options, option 1A, 2A, 3A, are the funding, FGC funding level support. And it's,
But for apples, let's just stick with 1A for now, so we have numbers, yeah.
so 1A, of course, $8,200 per resident. Assumption B, meaning we add an additional program, approve additional program, that drops to $7,772, about $500-ish dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little over 400.
Yeah.
Is my math right? Okay.
Just context.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I appreciate the data because it is helpful to really talk about it openly. I don't want anybody to have any qualms or questions about our decisions,
Yeah.
so. Okay, other comments?
Yeah, I had one more point, looking at those options. I don't know if that's exactly what's on the table now, but the faculty development fund, there's 3 different numbers on there. We've just allocated some money, $25,000 to that. So I don't know if we want to use that as
We will.
a discussion
We will
point.
definitely get to that. The question before us is about adding the one additional program that is eligible right now. So just that, I think it is fair, and we will discuss the other items as we move forward.
No, I would also add, like, I'm in support if they have continued accreditation and approving this. My comment was just sort of meant to make everybody aware of what was going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate the information. We have a couple.
Just a point of clarification for this funding level, the 981 residents, does that include the potential 54 for the food program, or that would be an addition to?
So the 981 is current number, so that's assumption A.
So 981.
So without, so it would be
It's without, okay.
1035, 1,035. That includes the 54 for ACA, which is assumption B.
Yeah,
That second
to the
page.
right.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
and then page 2, this page shows the addition.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Would it be appropriate for me to ask a question?
Sure.
So, so this is Tom Banning. And not that I have a vote, but I'm obviously very supportive of following the current guidance that we use in terms of bringing programs on. I think the fact that we got additional funding this year should make it a little bit easier, because if you think about the fact that currently programs are getting $3,700 and change, and even on the program, you're talking about moving that number up to 7,700 per program. It's still a 70+% increase in total. I do think, and this is a longer conversation, probably not for this committee, but rather the coordinating board and the legislature, is how do you address those programs that will be coming in, that are getting $150,000 per resident through the GME expansion, where the existing programs aren't able to take advantage of those dollars. And for a broader question, and I'm saying this because I know we're streaming, the whole concept of the GME expansion grants were to help with startup costs and other additional expenses for standing up a new program. After 3 or 4 or 5 years, I think it begs the question of, where are those startup costs, right? I mean, you've stood up the program. Is $150,000 per resident still an appropriate amount now that the sunk cost of standing up that program has been spent? Or is there a better way to allocate some of those dollars?
And, when we last discussed this issue, the 2 pots of money, at that point in time, it was new. And so we didn't know if they were going to continue in perpetuity, which seems like it's happening now, or if it was going to be truly short-term funding, and we didn't know if it was even going to continue. And so a lot of uncertainty, but now it seems like here we are, I don't know how many years in to expansion, a number of years.
It's been at least 8.
Yeah.
And I think that's the question, like, at some point, is the state going to say we cannot afford to keep doing the expansion, right? So like this biennium, we got an additional $34 million, which is not insignificant. However, this was a good biennium because there was a surplus.
But I do think the idea, I mean, it's like your kids, right? They graduate from college, you say, you're on your own, right? So maybe at some point that's a piece of this. Has there ever been discussion about that?
I mean, I feel like I think we touched on it last time as well. when we had this discussion of, do we want to add a program or do we
Yeah.
not? And what's the thoughts of the committee and the committee members? Is it, historically, we've always added, right? So like,
We have indeed.
would there become a point where that may not make sense, to Tom's point, because they are getting these other funds? And then at some point, if they are not eligible for those, would they then step into this? And I don't, I'd have to check with our legal, but I mean, I think that is still something that the committee would have to, maybe have a discussion about. It sounds like at this point, everybody is, because this was a good session and it's not going to diminish the amount, they're still going to get an increase even with adding the program.
Well, and if we were going to go down a different path, I think there's a fairness principle here.
Right.
We've added programs who have gone through GME expansion.
Right.
So what makes this different? I know I would have a hard time making that case, I think.
Right.
However, if we were to reconsider, and it seemed like the GME expansion funds were continuing into perpetuity like it is,
Right.
then we might need to reconsider the whole question.
Right.
I would
Well-
prefer, and I think we'll need some guidance from legal counsel and
Sure.
from staff.
And are there data points that would help that decision-making process? Because right now, like, what data would you all need in order to consider making those choices? And
Well, you can make it even more complicated too, because, there are existing programs that may have added a slot or two.
Right.
And taken advantage of that GME expansion grant that were already part of this program. So how you
Well,
differentiate the
you could divide the baby a little bit though, because those numbers could be not included in the numbers if they were supported by I mean, you can get down to that granularity because we have that data, right? I do think it would be worthwhile to explore that, begin exploring that question, just to see, because we're going to continue to see, as we see, additional residents coming on board potentially coming on board.
Right.
And we need to figure that out.
I think the important thing to remember is this committee can only control or advise, not control
Right,
anything, but
exactly, right.
advise the coordinating board on how to allocate the family medicine residency program dollars. Which
Yeah.
crosses over into the GME expansion, but you don't have that authority.
Right.
Well, and I think we have to go back and look at the statutes for each to see what space we have as well, and check with Office of General Counsel.
So I'd like to put that on the parking lot for later on. We're going to talk about agenda items for a future meeting. That should be an agenda item for a future meeting, I think.
Yeah, and we'll see what we can pull to kind of give you guys a sense of some of that, because I think somebody told me when I started working legislative stuff 15 years ago, the 6 months after a session, you do your stuff from the session that happened, and then you start planning for that next session. So, in terms of information and things like that, we can start gathering some of that, because we don't know what the financial situation will be. So
Yeah. All right.
I think every year this discussion comes up.
it does. Yeah.
Well,
I think the last 7 years. someone's
I
brought it to
think
the table.
in fairness, it is a valid issue that we need to work through. Okay, so we have that as a planning item in the future to start looking at that. And we will, as Tom said, we will potentially advise on that issue
Yeah.
down the line.
Yeah.
Okay, other discussion item before us, which is the addition of one program to the mix. Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, and I have a second, I believe.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the new program, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. So that motion passes. Thank you. I think at this point, we have penciled in a potential update from Cindy Fisher and talking about the programs down in the valley. And so Cindy, can you give us a little update? And Dr. Vela, I think, may have some comments too.
Sure. So it looks like that the program that was at DHR, UTRGV, has taken those residents. I think there were 14 residents in that program, and they have put them into their McAllen and their NAP programs. There were, I believe, 4 residents that opted to leave the program and not go into the other 2. So they've temporarily taken them into the other programs. They haven't increased any kind of, they haven't increased their positions at those programs yet. It's just a temporary. And they would be the 2s and the 3s. They did not match PGY1s for this year.
And I'm sorry, how many elected to stay of the total?
Let's see, there were, I'm sorry, there were 16 and 4 left. So 12 of them stayed.
Stayed, okay. And as we do, when a program closes, other residencies absorb those residents to help with the load. And is there a plan ongoing for those slots or no? Do we know?
And I just talked to Melba Sanchez over at UTRGV. She says they're still discussing what's going to happen down the line with the program.
Okay.
But correct me if I'm wrong, DHR is opening up a new program with a rural focus up to Rio Grande City.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Do we know the size?
Full track.
Dr. Vela, do we know the size of that program?
I think we're starting with 4 residents per year.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll turn to our next item.
Mike, can I ask
Oh,
one?
Yeah.
Cindy, do you know of any other hospitals or institutions that are looking at opening up new family medicine programs? You're on mute, Cindy. I'm sorry. I do it all the time.
Sorry about that, wouldn't click right. We have a couple of planning grants currently ongoing that might have some family medicine within them. We have a new planning grant RFA that's going to be released in the next few weeks. So that may open up some programs, but I don't have any that are that I am aware of for sure right now that are going to begin.
Can you keep us up to date on any of those planning grants that are focused on family medicine? Because I think that would help with the discussion that we will have on, new programs opening up through the GME expansion.
Sure. Ernest and I work pretty closely on that whenever something comes up. And I know for sure if they've applied for accreditation or they're about to, then, I'll let him know that, hey, this is coming up, put it on your list of upcoming. So I'll go ahead and keep up with Ernest on that.
And let's plan on another item for next time around to update on potential new programs, just to know.
And just, if you may.
Yes.
The opposite of that is that do we have any at-risk programs with all the dynamic changes that we've been having? Do you know any programs that could be in trouble?
The only indicator we usually get is the financial reports, if there's something that sticks out on there, but
Yeah.
most folks, most of those numbers that are in the red are covered by the entities, so.
I know that in the written reports, we'll talk about those a little bit later. It remains the number one concern is finances. And so, some programs have unfilled spots due to finances. And so, this shot in the arm, I don't know how much that will help. We'll see. But I think that could be part of that discussion as well. If there was any program we thought might be at risk. We heard a little bit about a program that may be at risk this morning already. Okay. We'll move on to our next item, which is it's an action item, and it is for FY 2024 funding scenarios. So now we're going to move into the different options within those, and we're now on the second option, which includes the additional residents. And so we'll let Ernest lead us through this as well.
Okay, just going to give you guys a recap of fiscal year 2023. Of course, was $4.7 million, $4.75 million. We contracted 35 programs. We certified 981 residents this year and funded 964 of those. Difference in those numbers are early completers or residents that are off cycle. And they were each awarded at $4,736.43. Made awards to 35 residents for rural rotation for a total of $87,500. We made 3 public health rotation awards at $6,000 total. And we awarded $100,000 to the Faculty Development Center. This is the chart you guys have seen, over the years, which basically outlines the last 20 years of funding and the number of residents per year. As you can see, the early 2000s, we were upwards of $14,000 per resident. In 2012 and 13, we took a big legislative hit. I believe it was 44%. And then, of course, some funding was restored the next couple of years. And of course, we've just seen a decline and either programs closing, I think it was 18 and 19, and additional funding cuts by the legislature. So thankfully this year we saw a boost, as Tom mentioned earlier, which is going to increase those numbers again, and hopefully get us back to those historical highs.
Yeah, so, a question was, what kind of data would we want? I think this graph is very helpful for that. I think superimposing on this graph, when a funding cut happened would be helpful. Because some of the decrease in funding per resident is because we added more residents. Some of it is because funds were cut. And so I think clarifying that a little bit so we understand the issue well.
Because
Be good.
12 and 13, that was when GME was started. So those were just like cuts. So it was like cuts and there was no GME money.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think the program closures were 18 and 19.
Mhm.
And then we started adding new programs 2019, I believe. So since then, we've added 7 programs, I believe.
At least.
I think 8 now with this one. So
Yeah.
That's what for that increase in the number of residents there.
And so another item I think for that future discussion is with the GME expansion versus court board, how to manage that is if you peeled out the GME expansion, what would the per resident be? And I think that would be interesting to see.
I think right now, I think about half of the programs are family medicine only. The other half are both family practice and GME extension. So,
Right. So it'd be interesting.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Making some strong work for us into the future, I think. It'll be interesting discussions. Okay.
So assumption A is no longer relevant now. So we'll go on to assumption B. And so assumption B adds 1 new program for a total of 1,035 potential residents. The different funding options are the level of support. So the rural rotations, historically, we've approved 40. We've approved 3 public health rotations. And then the FTC support at 3 different levels, 100,000, 50,000, and no funding with option 3A. And this would fund 36 programs. And your far right corner is the breakdown of the per resident amount. So option 1A funds the FTC at 100,000. So per resident amount would be 7,772.
You said 1A, you mean 1B?
1B in the back.
1B, I'm sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
divided by, yeah. So 1B, I'm sorry, yeah, so that's correct. See, working late does not always.
You didn't have any coffee this morning. That
I didn't have any comments for it. So I'm sorry. 1B, per resident 7,772. 2B would decrease the FTC support of 50,000, increases the funding level for per resident amount to 6,820. And of course, the last throws out the FTC, and that's your highest dollar for the per resident amount. Historically, the 1B option is the most popular. So with that, I'll turn that over to the committee for discussion.
Okay, any discussion or questions for Ernest?
So, yeah, I mean, so we can change the amounts when we decide how much, right? So I'm not sure how much we've historically given to the Faculty Development Center. I mean, there's $100,000 there. What do we give last year, the year before that, and before that? I mean, we just allocated another
It's been 100,000.
Prior to 2018, I believe it was 150. Which has been the highest level they've received. But since then-
And that was we all took cuts, and so that was the discussion back then. But I think for the most recent several biennium, we've been at 100.
Okay, so do we want to discuss an option where we leave 80 since we just allocated 23,000? I mean, it looks like for programs, it's just a few dollars a person, right? But if you got a big program and you start multiplying the difference by a big number, it's not an insubstantial amount of money.
I think that's a fair point to discuss. Any other discussion around that concept?
I would point out that the funding that you just approved for 23 expires in August of 31, and the funding that this is proposing is on the state fiscal year for September 1 through August 31st. So if you were to cut 25, and I don't know what the FDC's calendar is, fiscal calendar is, but they would not have access to 20 to smooth out the 24 fiscal year.
Yeah, you can't carry it forward, so you got to spend it. Right.
No, but there's
That's
always some
one
flexibility.
con against the concept.
There's always some, I would opine that there's always some flexibility in terms of when you can put money on the books. So I'm not sure. I mean, I understand the point. I'm not sure I totally give that point away.
I think I would just say that if we were going to cut it, just to add that to the full pile of $25,000 for all these other programs, I don't think that we would have as much impact at individual program level than we would for the additional support or the continued support for the Faculty Development Center. So I think that in terms of how our bang for the buck with the FDC I think is pretty powerful.
We're talking about $25 again per resident. If we were to
Dr. Stran's here. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve 1B and then continue the FDC support at past levels.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Further discussion? So we have a motion on the table that has been seconded, so I'll put that to a vote. All those in favor of funding option 1B, funding the FDC at 100,000. That's the only variable in these three scenarios. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
And I think we have, is that one opposed? That was quick. I think that's right. Okay. So I believe the motion passes. So thank you. Good discussion, and it's relevant points. Okay. Let's see. We are now down, I think, to the annual written report summary. And I'm going to provide that if I can get to that page. So just a few comments to begin. It is very interesting to read those reports and somewhat cumbersome to summarize those reports. My wife gives me the bad stare when I'm looking at the reports while we're watching TV, but it is what it is. But very interesting information. And so I'm going to try and just give you kind of a high level of what's going on in our program. I would say the programs are very diverse, some really cool innovations going on in the programs, and great service. So all the programs are serving the communities across Texas very, very well, and really nice program. So first off, number of positions in the program ranges 2 to 24 first-year positions. With discussions about increasing or decreasing that we've already had, we asked the program directors in the next 4 years, should they see a change? And we heard 6 with a yes on predicted change, 5 reporting an increase predicted, and 1 reporting a decrease predicted. So mostly increasing. Some of those changes were temporary, and we heard about some taking on of other residents already, and that's a bit of it. 1 was returning to approved levels. They had been down because of funding, were moving back up. 4 programs intentionally did not fill all approved positions due to funding concerns. 1 program reported withdrawal of all hospital support, though the numbers didn't represent that in the data, so it was a little confusing on that, but I think that was actually true. We know about that. Number of first-year residency positions filled in the National Residency Matching Program. All programs reported filling first-year positions. 1 program did not fill in the match, and this is to their report. I didn't verify that with the NRM stuff, so I don't know. Affiliation. So the question is, your residency program affiliated, sponsored, located? There were lots of different arrangements. The highest frequency was affiliations with 20. There were 10 that were located and 1 that was sponsored, and 2 that reported no connection to a school of medicine. What I would say about that is that I'm not sure that every program answers that the same way. So I looked at some of the answers and I said, I think I would answer that differently for you because I know your program. But whatever the case may be, that's what was reported. Was your residency program a training site for 3rd-year students? And by and large, almost everybody was. 32 yeses, 1 no, a single no. And the range of number of students trained was from 1 to 262 per year, with a total of 1,277 per year. So that's a tremendous amount of training for students. Question 8, did you request funding from a Texas medical school to support such training, that 1,200, almost 1,300 students? And 8 reported a yes. And the scope of the funding was $0 to $2.2 million. 3 programs reported $1 million range of funding. And I really suspect there is differences in reporting. And you know, I've been coming to this meeting for 100 years, maybe, something like that. And that's always been the case, that there's been confusion about how you account for those dollars. And again, I would probably have answered differently for some programs than they answered, but that's what they answered. Question 11, recruitment activities for underrepresented populations. A lot of different discussion, some innovation, social media, Zoom. Many talked about their diverse patient population or their diverse faculties as being interesting for attracting underrepresented populations. Many had EEOC rules from parent organizations. Residency fairs were listed. Underserved training track was listed. Some had selection criteria to drive that. Some had structured interviews. Applicant survey instruments also to try and collect data and improve the program. A few programs mentioned unconscious bias training. Several mentioned DEI training. 1 program favors applicants that have lived in a HPSA area for years or more before application. That's kind of interesting on the front end. 1 program mentioned ladder programs that seek to support experiences for high school students to recruit into health professions. And last night in Lubbock, I was at a meeting of community members from Lubbock, and our economic development folks saying, you really need to focus on those ladder programs, trying to bring students in. And apparently many communities are funding those. And so there's a lot of opportunity to partner there, perhaps. Okay, so question 12, describe efforts by your program to meet the legislative intent of the Family Medicine Residency Program. And many said they had rural or public health rotations and sites that were established. Some required those rotations. Some said their clinical training sites specifically serve underrepresented populations. 1 mentioned partnerships with state agencies to accomplish this. And so mostly service to the community, it sounds like. Innovation. There were many, lots of curricular innovation around procedures, embedded in longitudinal curricula for lifestyle medicine, women's health, mental health, research, point of care ultrasound, international medicine, leadership training. Many types of patient-facing social determinants of health interventions mentioned, as such as food programs, TV outreach, free clinics. One program mentioned becoming a patient-centered medical home certified. Several programs highlighted grant funding support for curricular innovation. And again, curricular innovations included POCUS, DEI, medical Spanish, addiction management, motivational interviewing, procedural training. Many programs mentioned innovative programs around mental health, social work, and pharmacology, and the partnering of those disciplines with family physicians. There were several programs that described well-being initiatives for residents, and there's been a flurry of that since the pandemic, lots of discussion there. A number of programs highlighted community partnerships with advanced patient care and residency training. Several described primary care research initiatives. So across the board, lots of different things going on. Under challenges, I mentioned this before, but number one is financial. There were multiple concerns, which included revenue declining, staffing concerns, burnout, fatigue of residents and faculty. One program reported again losing its sponsoring hospital. There were several programs reporting challenges in training in pediatrics and OB. A few programs said away rotations are not funded by sponsors, and this is programmatic, and it actually limits the ability to do the away rotation. A program mentioned the risk of losing the teaching health center funding, which was vital. There was mention of loss of faculty protected time. Several issues were raised regarding physician loan repayment, including one that felt time with resident teaching should be included. And I'm not sure about the definitions on that, but that was a concern that was raised. A program mentioned difficulty in faculty recruitment as well. On question 15, how can the Family Medicine Advisory Committee help? And over and above, it was advocate for more funding. And so hopefully that will be well received as we bring forward more dollars this year. And then lastly, we asked them if they want contact. Every year we asked, every year 2 or 3 program directors say they want contact. Every year I reach out and they never respond. So I don't know, if you're not getting your questions answered, please let me know.
You're not alone.
We try. I try. Okay, and so that's it for the written reports. I think it is very interesting to hear what's going on across the state. The diversity of programs and diversity of populations that we treat are amazing. And so really good work. And it's uplifting to read those reports, I think. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just had a question about why, because I know that we always track third years medical students in science. Is there any reason that we don't track fourth years, or could we track fourth years? Because I think that's all, there's also, just so we have a more accurate reflection of the amount of work that's being done at clinical training. And then also in some programs, clinical training actually starts in the second year. So for example, in Austin, there's their longitudinal rotation starts in the MS2 year. So I think we're not capturing all the work that residency programs are doing on medical education for students. So if we could maybe consider tracking for MS2 students for those programs that might have MS2 clinical students, or MS4 students who are doing, because many times doing FMAI is sometimes there are additional rotations from outside rotators, but many times they're also from our own institutions. So I think that would be helpful to just capture the amount of real work that the programs are doing for UME, for education.
I think it's a great point, and at that point, the total number, I totaled those up because I do think that is a talking point for our programs broadly, that we have a great impact. And so that further details that. And so I think we could adjust the written reports to capture that data. And it may be that we want to ask by year, because maybe some programs even start in the first year. I don't know. First, second, third, and fourth year students, the total number would be.
Would it be helpful to have, or if you, I don't want to volunteer you, to relook at the current version of what we out?
You mean the questionnaire?
Yeah.
No, I'm a program director, so I get the questionnaire. So, but it just asks about third year students. So
Yes, but I mean, we can add that and then circle back around and make sure it's capturing what.
Yeah, I mean, I think just adding.
Okay.
I mean, I can't speak for all program directors,
Sure.
but I don't think it's a big deal to add that, and we can capture it.
Okay.
MS 1 through 4, just in the event that there might be first years that are doing some clinical work
Mhm.
with the residency programs or their clinics.
It does raise an interesting question, though. Your point is, do we need to look at both the written and financial reports and see if we revise them? And it's been a long time since those were substantially
Yeah.
revised, I think.
And I think to your point, I mean, it sounds like depending on whose you reviewed, there were different interpretations of the question.
Yeah.
So is it worth maybe having a couple folks on the advisory committee go through and maybe reaching out to a couple of those program directors, and especially since you just reviewed them, if there were some that did have maybe an outlying perspective, you know.
Well, I think that certainly is something that we could maybe form a subcommittee to look at that. Is that legit to do that work in the subcommittee
I
from
think
the
so,
planning
yeah.
board rules?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
I'll double check, but I don't think there's any issue with.
I think they did it before as a subcommittee.
Yeah, and I think like, I don't even know if I did it when I was staffing this committee, but I think it's just hard for us to know. And
Yeah.
so I feel like advisory committee members are just in a better position to get to what you all will find informative in making decisions.
So with that in mind, are there folks who'd be willing to help to work on improving or revising the surveys? Anybody willing? You said you were willing.
I'm happy to have a look at it.
Okay.
and Review. Because,
I'm thinking we get a few
yeah,
people together.
Yeah.
And maybe have a virtual meeting to discuss it. Anybody else interested? Tom Benning, like, wow.
Well, and also consider some of the questions that we just discussed in the last.
Yes.
could I ask, if this may or may, I just had one other sort of comment, point of clarification, which I might reflect on asking other questions too, because a lot of these innovations are coming, some of it is coming because people are just leading the charge, but some are being driven specifically by ACGME revisions of training, specifically around point of care ultrasound, addiction, training. There's some other things as well too, population health and that. And so I think we do have restrictions on being able to purchase things like equipment. So I would like to maybe consider being able, if there are mandated things, because like these ACGME revisions are mandates without funding. So,
Yeah.
but it would be helpful to be able to use our funding specifically for ACG mandated training requirements such as point of care ultrasound or whatever comes down the road.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the statute. because-
Right, yeah, I know, I understand, but that's just another thing, just because when you look at the innovations, many of these are reflected on what we are required to put into effect in July of this year
Okay.
for training requirements for family medicine residency programs.
And some presented that as an innovation. Others said, just what you said, it's an ACGME mandate. That's what we're doing,
Mhm.
So I think it would be interesting to try and, so what's helpful for me is categorizing the data, and you can lead the answerer if you categorize it a little better.
Mhm.
And so I think that I would like to see us revise the written
Mhm.
down that path.
Yeah.
So
But
there's some different ways we can get that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to take the thunder away from programs that are leading the forward edge, because point of care ultrasound has been put into place in programs for, 1 year or several years. They're leading that. So, but also having some way to capture, to understand that some of this is mandated by ACGME for training requirements would be helpful.
You could even ask a question like that.
Mhm,
What issues do you see with mandated training?
mhm.
Sorry, we were having a side conversation on all of our, I'm also responsible for degree program proposals. And we're reimagining all of those forms, and we're trying not to do PDFs, and we're trying to be more thoughtful in terms of what the institutions submit to us. And I was just asking him, I couldn't remember what you all submitted, but trying to think through if there's a technology platform that might be helpful for you guys to submit, so you could get the data
Thank you.
and look at all of the things.
That would be
Because
helpful.
it's like changing our world on the institutional degree program proposals instead of getting hundreds of PDFs.
Because the program I used for summarizing the written was a legal pad.
Yes, And I feel like when I would review them before, when I was a staff member, that's how I did it. So
Yes.
Ernest and I can kind of talk through maybe some different options to get it.
Yeah, you guys right there.
Because I like my division is very committed to making things more streamlined and easier for and trying as much as possible to remove any burden on the institutions and our stakeholders and for you all as well. So we can talk about maybe seeing what opportunities are available to make that easier. So the people are reviewing it aren't there with a legal pad trying to like do all of the things.
That's good. Well, so we have yeah, he's got it right there. And I left mine at home, but I used it. So we got 3 folks that are gonna dive in and we'll work with Ernest to get that set up on a virtual meeting at some point, and then we can report back at the next meeting.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to think as we redevelop or rethink through what a survey tool would look like, trying to capture information that the legislature find relevant. Like, you know, there is a massive need in the state and a lot of effort put around mental and behavioral health. And, you know, our programs are the front door into the healthcare system. The vast majority, I shouldn't say vast majority, but a good chunk of your work is tied around mental and behavioral health and how you express that. There's a, you know, that's a big return on investment in terms of opening up that capacity that other programs or other strategies may not be as successful doing.
Well, there's, as I recall, there's expansion specifically for mental health, behavioral health training and in this legislative session. And I think, I mean, it's captured in innovation stuff, but I think we should be much more explicit about it. I agree, because it does help, because I think all of us have, there's some level of behavioral health that's happening. And it would be great to capture it and also be able to have dollars to pull in to provide more patient care and training for folks too.
Okay, well, we got a plan to revise that. Do you have a question or comment?
Yeah.
Who?
Mark.
Mark?
Yeah, I was just we're lamenting that we need money for different initiatives, you know, like point of care ultrasound. And then question 15, our constituents told us that they want us to preserve funding from the from the funding source that we're voting on here. So I mean, I'm not trying to overly harp on the point, but every time we give the programs a haircut, we're taking a little bit out of those needs. And so there's a lot of competing interests, and I get that. I'm not trying to relitigate the question again, but our constituents, you know, want the money granted to them so that they can use it for things that they see as priorities. And I think some of them think that that's the best way to spend the money, even if it's a small amount. So I just want to go back to that point, given this discussion. Thanks.
Yep. Very good. All right. Any other comments? All right. We'll move on to our next item, which is the annual financial report. And Dr. Unger is here to help us walk through this. This is an informational item. Dr. Unger, you want to tell us how the finances look?
Thank you, Dr. Reagan. Thank you for allowing me to do this with your help, everybody's help here every year. And Ernest, thank you for putting this together. It's a lot of detailed information, and I'm going to try to go through it as fast as I can. I just don't know any other way to do it, but work through it as much as you can work with me. I do still have my legal pad. It works really well. So again, thank you for allowing me to do this with your help. And as always, I want this opportunity to just applaud the leaders in family medicine, residency program directors and chairs of various institutions and in the hard work that they do to get this together with limited resources. It's nice to see some increase in funding going forward, but again, as we discussed earlier, the more programs we add in, that those monies start dwindling down, and it's something that we need to definitely discuss in the future. The total number of residency programs funded in 2022 were 38. The financial report and the spreadsheet is pretty jammed with information, and I'm hoping that the documents have been circulated, have been reviewed by everybody in the committee, and you can have an idea of what we're talking about. Again, I'm always, excuse me, I know I live in Lubbock. allergies in Austin, just terrible. It is important that you bear in mind that not all programs are created equal. And this is a favorite statement of mine every year. And I often get a call or two from program directors saying, I was reading some of the financial reports and how comes these guys have so much more than we do? And I just have to explain to them that programs are not created equal as far as funding is concerned and funding sources are concerned. And so it is important that they always bear in mind as they review this information. So if you have any questions, please bear with me until the end of this presentation, and then we'll take it from there. Again, the programs are funded were 38. The total number of certified residents that were funded this month was 909. The total revenues looks huge at 239 plus $1 million that were collected by the programs. And of this, about 4.55 million was from the operating grant from the coordinating board. The grant varies from program to program because of their size differences. And so the amount of money that was available per resident was about $5,505. And you arrive at this by dividing the total grant by the number of residents in the program. The total revenue generated by programs also was varied greatly among programs of similar sizes. This is also because of financial structures, revenues, streams, and contracts, and local and institutional grants that some programs have that others have. Our largest programs, again, are JPS at 70 residents, and Texas Tech Odessa is really pushing them hard at 63 residents. Dr. Benton is doing a tremendous job of expanding opportunities in Fort Stockton, all the way down to Alpine, expanding opportunities for not only the communities, but residency education in those environments. And it's really great to see that happening. Our smallest program, again, is a UT Tyler program, Pittsburgh program. I believe that's the rural tract. Alan, is that correct? It's a rural tract in Ernest.
I'm sorry?
It's a rural tract, the Pittsburgh program.
Yes.
1-2, yeah.
Is it a 1-2? Okay. And the Baylor University Medical Center also had 12 funded residents. The Christian St. Michael Hospital in Texarkana also had 12 funded positions. So those are some of the smallest programs that we have that are being funded by the coordinating board. As far as rural rotations are concerned, there's a total of $92,500 funded for rural rotations in fiscal year 2022 with Texas A&M and Texas Tech Lubbock, utilizing the majority of that money at $22,500 each. Most programs do not apply for the rural rotation funding, and it is one of those questions that I think we need to look at, because we have a lot of programs that have opportunities, even in that survey, as to why people are not taking advantage of these dollars whenever they're available for rural rotations. There's also an approved rural rotation column, if you guys can look at that, and a reported rural rotation. This means that all funding that the program requests for rural rotations, they must submit the money. They must submit the request, get the money, but that money must be expended at 100%. And if it doesn't, you guys saw earlier, it must be returned. It cannot sit in the back gaining interest. And if it does, that interest needs to go back to the coordinating board. Very, very important. Okay. The total grants. This column is simply adding the operational grant amount together with the rural rotation funding. This amount remains essentially the same for most programs, especially the people that applied for the grants for rural training or rural experiences. The percentage of the total revenue. This column is simply a division of the total grant by the total revenues generated by the programs to give you the percentage of money that the coordinating board added to the till. Basically, it's a little confusing. This column is a simple division of the total grant by the total revenue generated by the programs to give you a percentage of the money that the coordinating board added to the till. So the average was about 3%, with the lowest average at Waco at 0.87%, and the highest average at UT Tyler Pittsburgh at 14%. Now that just depends on the number of residents and how much money they're generating. It's important that we look at the revenue and revenue streams, and people like UT Waco need to tell us where they're getting all their money from. Be kind of nice. There was no unexpended balance and therefore no interest gained on any coordinated body grants, coordinated board grants. So we try to keep this column at zero each year for obvious reasons. Again, except for this one particular $36,000 that has gone to the coordinating board. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? I don't know the answer because over the years, that percent of total revenue for grant funding, do we know how that's trended over time? I think that would be interesting to know if you follow what I'm saying, the percent of budgets that.
Bless you.
This question, that would be helpful to know what the averages were over the previous years. Kind of like the graph you had of the numbers.
Yeah, that's
financial dollars.
Because Conroe's monies went down pretty hard this year compared to the previous years. They always had huge amounts of money. I know that their numbers went down hard. It'd be interesting why that's happening. If the federal dollars or the state dollars went down, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the patient revenue, again, those columns varies tremendously, and you have some huge numbers for some programs. And again, this just depend on the contracts that they have, and it'll be nice to know and share what information they have that we, rest of us, could use. There's tremendous difference with here ranging from 12+ million at Waco to 0 at several programs. And these are programs that report their revenue sources differently due to different financial agreements with their payers and the institutions. And so when you see a 0 somewhere, that doesn't mean that you don't collect any money. The money is there, it's just housed differently or reported differently, or the program itself may not even have access to monies at all. And all they know is that the money is being collected, housed within the institution, and then the money comes back to them somehow to support the program. And so 0 does not necessarily mean that they're not collecting any money for patient revenue whatsoever. The programs did a great job, and financial governance has been great. And watching this over the years, just the fact that we're able to spend the money that we are being given and being able to utilize it for the work that we're supposed to do is really great. And keeping everybody afloat, especially in the lean years, has been interesting to watch. Okay. The medical school revenue, again, some programs are housed within medical schools or have affiliation with medical schools, and then agreements on how money is shifted between the medical school and the programs. And so we also have community programs that have no direct affiliation, financial affiliation with medical schools. And so it's not unusual to see some zeros in some of that column, and also some huge numbers in those columns, depending where you are. The total amount of revenue for medical school was about 20.82 million. The greatest amount was at UT Tyler, 3.06 million. These are programs, once again, that are affiliated with medical schools and are directly funded with medical school because of for the work that they're doing. And some, again, reported no support whatsoever, and it's not because they don't have any money from those medical schools. Often it's because they have no affiliation with the medical school whatsoever. The rest of the monies, medical school revenue per resident, etc., it's pretty straightforward. You can read that for yourself. Hospital and local revenues. This is another area that's interesting. There are significant differences here among the programs, with the Memorial Hermann again coming up at 12.5 million. It's a lot of money. UT Houston 6.99 million, and some programs reported $0 for this column. Again, the reason is, I've said before, contractual agreements, local taxation, and district dollars going directly to the programs, and some get no money from the hospital districts, or they don't have any hospital districts to support those programs. And so for that reason, they would have there. And then Memorial Hermann is huge at 12.5 million. The specific amounts of money from hospital revenue and the local revenues are as reported, as you can see those reports. the overall effect to the total revenue for the programs what I find to be very, very important because some of these money really make a big difference for these programs and can really find opportunities that some other programs just cannot have. I know my program, Lubbock, we don't have that kind of money, and so it can limit what we do as innovation is concerned. But fortunately, we have other revenue sources. We can actually do some things to improve opportunities for family medicine going forward. As far as the federal dollars are concerned, the federal revenue, only one program reported federal revenue, and it is also a big decrease from the previous numbers, and that's the Coronal Medical Education Foundation to the tune of $1.4 million. This is down, unless if I'm not wrong, from the past. So something has been a tremendous change there for sure. Other revenue, Texas A&M reported 6.56 million, Waco 4.54 million, Conroe 3.25 million in other revenue, and most programs reported very little in this area, up to down to zero. Total expenditures per program, it's a big column again. These amounts are reported in columns A, G, and as in my, at least in my, is that correct on yours as well?
Correct, AG.
AG, yeah, they're reporting the column G, and as you can gather by now, most programs report a neutral ledger. And on the revenue minus cost column, you see there's some programs now that are showing up some negative or some significant loss. And this is where the at-risk programs get pay attention to them, with one of them reporting over $4 million in losses, which program was that? The entire program in South Texas, was that? Victoria, Texas, 4.055 million negative. Fortunately, most of the other programs, and even Waco reported a huge number, 2.04 million in negative revenue. And so those are big numbers, but Ernest reassured me that they have other revenue sources that cover those for them, because that is a question they must answer, because that definitely puts them at tremendous risk.
It looks bad on paper, but they've got other funding streams.
They've got other funding streams, and that helps out quite a bit, okay? So the total expenditure column, you can look at it and look at the difference between the revenue and the cost and make a determination as going forward. But it just helps to know that we are good as far as at-risk programs are concerned. It's not a big issue. Okay. And then the rest of the information is pretty straightforward, guys. I'm not going to bore you with some of the operating costs, faculty costs, because that depends on if we decide to write contract with the faculty is concerned. And then I'll let you guys just review that. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. Very much, and that's the report. I know it's confusing, there's a lot of information. Ernest, did I miss anything?
No, you nailed it right there. I mean, this is one of the areas where we're looking at trying to automate as well. Nightmare for the programs to collect. And it's a nightmare for us here to put it all together in a meaningful way that you can actually make some sense out of it. So my main goal is to work.
It's a nightmare for me to review.
Exactly. So we're working towards some better dashboards, some automated processes, so that programs could easily report this, can go online and view historical data, records. So these are things that I've been trying to get moving for the last 10 years. But now with our new leadership group, we've got funding coming in, perspectives on how things should run. So we're trying to tidy up the ship, if you will, and make this just a better reporting experience, a better overall experience for our programs, because it's been a nightmare. I mean, we collect data on different platforms. We're not consistent about it. I mean, I've been trying to change it up a bit. Nothing seems to be the perfect fix, but I know if I really sit down and kind of work with Elizabeth and our leadership folks and let them know that we do need some kind of a grant management system with some external dashboards. I mean, I think this would be a better flowing machine, if you will. I mean, we're pretty efficient right now, but it's a lot of work to get it all done.
You'd make a good health plan. Sorry.
So that's kind of what we're looking at, and hopefully, in the next year or two, we can get some better product out there for you guys to look at, and hopefully be on board with what we're working towards.
I think making it easier on the program directors would be a good move. I like that idea a lot. I think that's good. We'll get better information if it's easier to get done.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
For sure. So other questions of Dr. Unger and the financial reports? All right, well, I'm impressed with the bottom line, Fred. That's a lot of money being put to good use out there across the state.
Definitely.
So that's great. Okay. Well, we'll move on to our next item then, which is item 9, selection of chair and vice chair. Consideration possible action to approve the selection of chair and vice chair for fiscal year 2024. This is an action item. And we'll start with the vice chair. So do I have any nominations for vice chair of the committee?
So I guess I have a question. Both you and Fred have served us well, and I think we've been well led. If nominated, would you continue? Would you each be willing to serve, or have you had enough of this? And we need to nominate somebody else.
My call to duty is public service, so if the public says serve, I serve.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm happy to continue as well. I think that I'm proud of what the committee's done. I'm proud of what the residencies have done across the state. And I think we have an opportunity to continue to do that good work and try and improve upon that. So, but before us is the question of vice chair. So do I have a nomination?
I nominate Dr. Unger.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Okay, so I have a motion to nominate Dr. Unger to be the vice chair again for this next fiscal year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, congratulations, Dr. Unger.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
And I'll pass the baton to you to handle the chair nominations.
Again, this is the time that we get to think that the chief, the one that steers the committee, and I said Dr. Reagan has done a tremendous job in leading us, and like everything else, the only thing that's constant in life is change. And so if we have an opportunity here to select a new person, and so I would like to get a proposal for somebody to lead this group. The first question, please, to Dr. Reagan, if asked to, would you like to continue serving?
Absolutely. Be happy
Absolutely.
to.
So that is important to note, that his name is really the pool before we go ahead and just assume that he's not interested and nominate somebody else. But if you have any ideas on somebody else we can also nominate, that'd be great. It's an open committee. It's a democratic society. We must always remember that as moving forward. Anybody must not feel like they're forced to look at things with one microscope and one microscope alone. And that includes myself. So any nominations?
So Dr. Strands, I'll go ahead and nominate Mike Reagan to be the chair of this committee.
So we have a nomination.
Second.
We have a second from Alicia. Thank you very, very much. Any opposed? I see Damon is calling for some advice.
Phoning a friend.
Phone a friend, yeah, that's right.
Motion to approve Dr. Reagan as our chair going forward.
I think we
We have a motion, and on the second, we're good to go. All right, Dr. Reagan, you're it.
Did we
So you have
vote?
to vote.
You gotta vote.
Yeah, vote. We have to vote. Go ahead.
Oh,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None. All right, Dr. Reagan, you're it.
very good. Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks for that. I appreciate the opportunity to serve. I think Fred and I enjoy the opportunity to work with you all, and so look forward to continuing to do so. So we're down to what I believe is our next to the last item before adjournment, and that is to discuss future agenda items and future meeting dates. And so I think we already have identified a few things. Is there anything beyond that that we would like to add to the agenda for discussion?
Could we just review what because you brought up a couple of points, just review so we know
Yeah.
what's on for the future.
So I'll let you got a list. Why don't you read off the list?
Somewhat list here. So first thing I got was to expand the GME discussion for the participation, you know, if it's the, they're receiving both pots of money.
Expansion
So-
and to court and board.
Correct. So we'll put that as agenda item. The next thing is,
But before we get off of that one, I think it would be helpful to know, have a review of the programs that are approved in both pots, just so we kind of get a lay of the land on that. Because I don't know off the top of my head, all those programs. There's a lot of different programs now in that expansion.
Yeah, well, we can work with Cindy and she can provide maybe historical since that program started moving forward, and you can see kind of who's kind of in and then who's getting both.
That would be helpful. Okay, sorry I interrupted you. We're
No,
going to
you're
go on to the
good.
next item.
the next item, I'm gonna work with Cindy to get updates on the planning, future planning grants. So we'll work together to get you guys a list of those potential programs. Next item is a review of the written reports. And we'll put together a small committee for that, led by Dr. Trudy, to add some additional tracking metrics and data points for that.
Perfect, thanks.
And I have 3 folks on that committee. I have Dana, Tom, and Mike. Are you the third person now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else for that committee? No takers?
You better get in there. We're going to put like 100 questions on it.
Okay, well, we'll send that information out, and if we have additional folks, we'll get you guys added to that list. And then the last thing is just a chart of the percent of the total revenue from the financial reports. And I'll put together some other data pieces from that report. I'm certain that you guys could really benefit from some more data points and some more visuals from that data, so we'll
Yes.
get that put together too. So,
That's great. That'll be helpful.
so that's what I have for that. Actually, the next thing actually is to put you guys, your recommendations, to put those forward to the board meeting, which is July 28th, I believe.
Yes.
But I think you just have to present at the cause meeting, which is the day before,
Yes.
the 27th. So
So,
I'll get you that information. I'll get those memos drafted up, send them to the board. I'll send you a copy of those. And I think on the second day for the board, that should be put on consent. We did that this last year, so.
I have 20 board items this time, so I'm trying to get some consent
Boy, howdy.
items moved to consent that OGC will let me. So yeah, so I think, Dr. Again, if you could come to the cause committee meeting, and then for the board, I've talked to OGC and I think they're fine with it just being on consent for board.
So yeah, so that's what I have in terms of some homework, getting back to my desk. Aside from that, future meeting dates. Typically, the Wednesdays work good. Normally, we do either a spring or a summer meeting.
mhm.
We could shoot for either late May or excuse me, late April or May of FY 24 or 24. And of course, that would entail the reports again and funding for the next fiscal year.
Yep.
But some of that you already have here, because that's basically what that was granted. So you have some of that here already, but if that works fine, then that's what I'll shoot for. Send you guys a doodle poll and get some dates ironed out.
That sounds like a great, unless somebody has a concern about that, I think that sounds like a good plan.
Typically, it's a Wednesday from 11, 9 to 12, so.
Yep.
Last couple of meetings, you guys have knocked out
If you
in
and I don't
under
get
2
sick.
hours, so
You got the flu too, right?
if that works well, we'll continue that.
Jury duty.
Yeah, jury duty, but I'm sorry.
Yeah,
my family-
we're just talking about, sometimes the things pop up.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I got sick with
Yeah.
the flu and.
Blue,
I got the jury duty.
That's beauty.
stressful time.
Yes. Okay, so we'll look forward to the doodle poll coming forward to set that next meeting sometime late April, early
April or May.
May. Yeah, sounds like a winner. And I didn't hear any additional agenda items. Anything else we need to add? Okay, very good. We'll go with that. And so we're down to our last item. We are at adjournment. And so this will conclude our meeting unless there's anything else anybody would like to throw out there. And so our time is 10:50. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.